Hello YouTube watching people, Sanxion here Mark, and today we're going to talk about drum tracks in 140 jungle. If you're not sure what 140 jungle is, it's fairly self-explanatory. It's music at around the 140 BPM mark that takes jungle elements, but also breaks elements, maybe some dubstep elements. But yeah, let's get right into it. So to save a bit of time, I've loaded in some samples that I think, some break beats and a kick instead, I think will work quite well together. So let's have a quick listen to those. So that's quite a slow one. You probably recognise that from, I believe that's the break in Terminator 2 that, you know, he does the pitchy stuff on. But you also recognise it from Sub-Dub. I can't actually remember the actual source for that, but anyway, you know it, I'm sure. We also got this break. Obvious what that is. This break. Very obvious what that is. And we got a kick and a snare. So let's start having a play around. Obviously, we want to get to 140 BPM. This breakbeat very much slower than 140 BPM. I've purposefully made Cubase forget what BPM that break is because I want to show you a few things. So, three ways we could do this. We could time compress that to fit, and that would sound a little bit like this. If we go to Process, Time Stretch, set it to use the locators because we know that that's our 4-bar section, and we're going to set this to drums, and when we play that it will have time compressed it to fit. But I don't like the sound of that, so what we're going to do is change this to tape. And what this does is, imagine if you were loading this to a sampler in the old days and you would play a C note and it would play the break at the correct BPM and the correct pitch. But we want to go a lot faster, so you would play it higher up the keyboard. So not only would it play it faster, but it would play it at a higher pitch. That's literally what we've done here. In Ableton, I believe that's called re-pitch. And we've listened to it now. It's 140 BPM, but it's also pitched up. Which, for the purposes of today, sounds a lot better. So once we've done that, I want to bounce that down. Then, this break, let's do exactly the same. No, let's not do exactly the same. Let's actually time compress this one. So again, we would go Process, Time Stretch, and set it to drums, use locators. Now if you notice, that algorithm drums has made that kick drum and a little bit of vocal sound a bit watery. And we don't want that, so let's go with one of Cubase's more modern algorithms. It should sound a bit cleaner. Yeah, and it's kept the original pitch whilst changing the tempo. So we'll do that with the Amon. We will, this is almost 140 anyway, but let's do it properly. Oops. Let's go Process, Time Stretch, set to locators. I've just set the locators to where we want them. And we'll set this to tape to pitch it up. Here we go. And we're going to bounce that. Now, if we just play all those together, it's going to sound horrible and messy like this. And if we were doing a more sort of authentic kind of sounding hardcore tune, we would roll with that, but we're not. So let's go on a little tidy up mission. So first thing to note, I don't like that ringy snare where it is, so let's use that as our first half. Move that out of the way just for a second. And that is our second half. And we should have a new loop now, a new 1-bar loop. And tidy it up a touch more, because I can hear the echo from the snare ringing over that shuffle there. There we go. Let's bounce that down. And we do want to use that ring at some point, maybe in our 4th bar. Yeah, so let's move that out of the way for now, and let's work on our 1-bar loop here. So what I'm going to do, as much as we want some of that shuffle in there, we definitely want our snares to be hitting on the beat. So I'm going to go to Warp, and just ever so slightly tweak. Can you see the snare here hitting slightly late? So let's bring it onto the beat. And there, slightly early now because we've moved stuff, but let's move that one so it's hitting on the beat. So listen to that. And I might just take the shuffle out of this a little bit. It's a little bit swingy at that point, so let's do that. And we'll bring that up to there. Just tweak that in a bit. And especially want that to be hitting there. You should be able to pick out as like an open hat in there. I want those hitting as well. Is the rhythm. Is that high? So I like that. Let's bounce that. And quickly do the same job for this second version of the break we've got. So you see that ring snare is slightly early, and that one's now that was slightly late, and now this one's slightly early. And I don't like the look of that, so let's do that. And again, I want that end one to be really tight. So that's a little bit too swingy for me there. Let's quantize that a touch. That sounds nicer to me. So let's bounce that. Now let's do the same with this breakdown here. Our second one. As you can see, this snare, whatever we're going to say, a new version. This snare is hitting a little bit late, so let's bring the transient of that back. Now if you notice, because we've warped this whole section, it's messing with this kick drum a little bit. So we'll put a marker there before we move there, and that should keep the start a bit cleaner. Again, this snare is just slightly too late. But I've got an idea. I'm going to bounce that down. I don't like having the vocal part of that break there. So let's chop in and use some hi-hats instead. And let's bounce that down to a sample and make this really, really quantized, as though we programmed in a rhythm on the 16ths. Like, look at that, way off. And this might go against like what you really want. Like, you know, if you want the swing in a break, don't do this, but I think this is going to sound really nice in a way that's going to work once we start programming extra drums on top. I think it's going to sound cool. Oh, look at that. Really get everything hitting on the 16ths. And I don't like those N2. I quite like having that sort of stop in there. That sounds kind of nice. So now we've got a really, really quantized version of that. There's a lot of information going on that other break. Let's quickly do the same on this Amen, just make sure all the snares are hitting. I don't want to kill too much of the shuffle out of this, but it looks pretty good already. That snare's probably a touch late, so we'll probably just bring that back a bit. And that snare probably a little bit late as well. Let's bring that forward a touch. And that snare, we just want the transient to be hitting that. That bit's fine. Okay, so let's start making these sound a bit nicer together. Let's have a look at the top break. There's a lot of bottom end on that. We can start cutting some of that away. Really, that's all about the ring in the snare that we want. So let's like really just cut off. And use your ears, don't use the numbers, just till it sounds where you want it. I want it quite harsh, we just want that ring out of the snares and the hi-hats. And bring it down in level a little bit as well. Let's see how that sounds with that break. They sound quite nice together. Let's do the same on this second break, just cut off some of that bottom end information. Yeah, we don't need all of this going on, I don't think. So it's a fairly sharp cut. I can use your ears till it starts sounding weird and then back it up. Like there. Back there. So it's still got a little bit of weight in the snare, but not too much. Bear in mind we're going to add our own kick and snare later on. Okay, now let's check out this aim and break. Again, a lot of bottom end information we're not going to need, quite boomy this one. Just getting rid of some of that boom in the bottom, nothing too major. I'll probably bring that down in the mix a touch as well. All we're doing is just leveling stuff off so in theory they all sound nice together. That's nice. They sound pretty cool together. Just messy enough that it's reminiscent of old hardcore, but not so messy as that it's going to be unworkable. Let's put our extra version in there. Let's give that a different colour so we know what it is. They sound pretty good. Let's start adding in our kicks and snare layer. This is where you get the sort of breaksy element from. I'll put this into the snare on its own. Right, we don't need a lot of that tail information, we don't need that. So let's do a little trim, a little volume. And we're just getting the hits, that's nice. And listening to our rhythm, it's going to be a simple kind of two-steppy thing, I think. A little bit loud in the mix, but turn that down a touch. And we'll do the same with our kick. So boom, 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 boom. Quick tip: if you cut in something that's got a lot of bottom end, you'll often not be hitting a 0 point at the end of your sample, so it'll click. So just tweak the volume at the end with a little fade. Bring that down a bit. There we go, that's our rhythm. Far too loud in the mix, but here we go. Again, we'll bring that kick drum down a touch. We want the breaks to be doing as much of the work as we can, but we still want a nice punch every time a kick hits. Just have a quick look at this aiming. I'll try something. Let's add a gate. See if we can get rid of some of that high noise without it sounding too choppy and weird. Right, that's too choppy and weird. Let's play with this threshold. that's what we did have. And then we're going to this. Just a subtle sort of change. It kills some of that top end. It's going to sound a bit cleaner in there. I don't really condone using a gate on a break. You would really want to chop into each of the hits and fade the end slightly to get that more choppy feel, but that worked. And we've bounced it down now. And we're back after a little edit. Someone came to the door. How exciting. So yeah, we'll listen to this aiming now, a little bit more choppy. And we've lost some of that hissy top end. So now when we listen to all our sections together, that's sounding pretty good. Still something a little bit clunky about this break. Let's have a quick look on the EQ, let's see what we can do. I might cut out just a little bit of this mid-range stuff. Right, let's do around there somewhere, so let's do a fairly surgical cut around there. A bit higher. Does appear to be around there, and maybe we'll do a slightly broader cut around there, quite low, but play those together now. Yeah, it sounds slightly nicer in there. And what we'll do, let's have a little edit here. Let's do a really typical sort of old school hardcore break edit that gives a counter rhythm against our aim. And so we would go there. Just those two together. And then, yeah, why don't we do bum, 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 put that there. Oops. Before we roll into our big ring snare at the end. That should sound pretty cool together. Yeah, I like that. Let's get a hi-hat going in there. And we want, like, I would say like a long closed hat rather than an open hat. So there's some closed hats. I like that one. Sort of closed but long. It's going to be way too loud in the mix, but let's have a listen. Just listen to it with the kicks and snares for now. I think what we'll do there, let's have an open hat on this one in the middle of the bar. And put it on the same channel. That's quite a good one. Sort of a long open hat. Yeah, I like the rhythm on that. Make sure it's working with our breaks. A bit loud. But this is where the sort of breaks element of 140 jungle comes from. Is the drums that you layer up on top of everything. That's the way I feel about it anyway. Yeah, that sounds good to me. I'm going to turn that into a part, just for making it easier to duplicate and copy around. And there we go, there's our section. And this end bit, let's tweak that a bit. We will go audio dissolve to get rid of the part we just made. I think what we'll do here, we'll move the long open hat towards the end. Put a 16th one there, we'll put that there. Listen to our rhythm. doesn't really work there. That feels like a good end of a fourth bar. Let's route all that to a group or a bus. We'll create a group in Cubase. This is the easiest way to do it. Create a group channel. We're going to call this drums group. Let's move that to the top. And each of these drum channels we will set to the output to that group. We can do this through the mixer by setting the route in there, but because everything's audio, it's dead easy. The inspector over here just lets us do it. So now, if we look, everything's routing through this drums group. Just make sure it's peaking below 0. And it totally is. So, on this group now, I like to add this thing here called Frontier. It's made by D16 and they do some pretty cool stuff. And in reality, it's kind of a brick wall limiter, but it doesn't always work exactly right. Like sometimes if you'd set the output volume to -1, it'll still peak higher than -1. But what I tend to do is just bring that output volume just somewhere slightly less than 0, and then just tweak the threshold until it just tickles away. And it just adds a bit of crunch. This is with it off. And this is with it on. It just kind of sticks everything together and gives it a little bit of top end crunch. And that really is it. That feels like a pretty decent drum track to me. You know, we could probably start doing some edits. Let's actually, before we do that, let's bounce all these down as single 4-bar samples. Bounce that. So I group all these and then we'll bounce them. And the reason I do that is just so we start chopping around, it just makes life really easy if everything is just single things. So, like, you know, we just duplicate that right across there really easily, but then we can start going. Right, let's chop in like there. It makes life so much easier that we've bounced it all down to do things like this. Instead of having that really ringy one there, let's find our normal one. Again, we can chop into the whole thing really easily. Drag that across. See what that sounds like. That sounds pretty cool as the last couple of bars. And then you can pair that up with like a drum fill or something. We'll set this to be, set this to output to the drums. Call this fill. Find a cool drum fill. I'll find one that I know is just going to work. These drum fills are really cool. They're mainly. If you watch any of Dodge and Fusky's old tutorial videos, you'll know that these drum fills are just built from Vengeance, toms and snares. make sure we're running at 140. That's way loud, but you get the idea. Like obviously you would probably edit that and make your own rhythm to it, or build your own out of, you know, snares and toms, but here we go. Here's our track. More interesting with the end bit, like roll off some of this sort of hats at the end, so you get a nice cool stop maybe as that final tom hits. Nice. And maybe a crash at the beginning or something. But yeah, there you go. 140 jungle drums. Till next time, see ya.